All right, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. It's your good friend Pozzible here, and I'm back in action with another look at some movies review. Movies or movie? No, movies. That's right, we're doing plural. You're getting a lot of movies from this one because we're looking back at an epic adventure. One that actually started, well, decades ago, but let's just go back 14 years in this case to 2001. And as I do this, I want you to actually to think about with me what might have been. Now, I don't say this to depress you. I say this to impress upon you what I'm feeling and how I feel about these movies as they were and as they are. Okay? Let me explain. First, we got to go back to 2001, of course, 14 years ago, when Peter Jackson was finally able to release his vision of the Lord of the Rings. Now, this was his grand scale. Now, don't get me wrong. I am sure, like a lot of people, he wanted to start with The Hobbit, but he really couldn't because, one, he wanted a grand scale. He wanted a lot for just one movie. But instead, he was able to create, but if you can make a humongous set for 3 movies, then that's something, you know? And that is why we have The Lord of the Rings first. Now, the one thing I think people don't understand is that The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit are very different stories in general. You know, Hobbit's a kid's story. About 300 pages, if I remember correctly. Somebody said that to me a while back. But I mean, I'm just saying it's just 300 pages. You know, each of these books are around like 400 or 500 pages. It's a whole different kind of adventure here. All right, but it's all part of the same universe. But there's a different look, different feel to each adventure. And I think that's one thing that confused a lot of people. The Lord of the Rings, to be honest, back in 2001, I was not looking forward to The Lord of the Rings whatsoever. You know, when I heard these movies were coming out, I remember the cartoon. And believe me, even by the standards of the time, this was a very bad movie, regardless of what they said on top. I did not care for this movie whatsoever. And the quote-unquote special effects that try to mix real life action with cartoon action, just horrible. Okay? So I saw this. I saw the cartoon version of The Hobbit. I loved it. But The Lord of the Rings, I hated. Now, they took all 3 stories. If I remember correctly, and don't get me wrong, my memory is a little muddled here. But if I remember correctly, they took all 3 books and they made one movie out of it. Here we were able to take the Lord of the Rings, make 3 movies out of it, and popularize the idea of trilogies. Popularize the idea of taking one storyline and making the 3 movies back to back. You know, people have done it before, but this was the one that really took off for something like this. And it gives you the idea of making an epic story. That was 2001. Fast forward 11 years to 2012, and now we're going to start with Bilbo Baggins and The Hobbit. One book, and they're going to split it into 2 movies. Well, they plan on doing it for 2 movies. Then they decided, hey, we got enough material in the end to split off into yet another movie. So we'll have 3 in the end, but let's just start off with the unexpected journey. Meet Bilbo Baggins for the first time. Get Martin Freeman into some Hobbit shoes, and let's continue the adventure. Let's return. After 10 years plus, we're going to return to the Shire and start this adventure again. And, you know, it starts off pretty fairly, as the book did. You know, the whole thing starts off with Bilbo Baggins just enjoying a morning pipe and Gandalf saying good morning. Oh no, Bilbo saying good morning to Gandalf, and Gandalf confusing him by saying, "What do you mean by good morning?" Gandalf was just playing, but it's all good and fun. It doesn't have the intensity. It wasn't meant to. You know, there's no real angst. He's going on an adventure. He's supposed to have fun. It's supposed to be something cool. It's supposed to be something he would never really do. So it starts off pretty fairly. But you get this sense that they're really extending the movie here. They're putting, they got all the elements, but they have more elements than what we want, more elements than what we need. Still enjoyed it though. I still liked the first one. The first one was really good. It was the Hobbit. The technology is getting better. The feet are getting better. Because let me tell you something. Back in the Lord of the Rings era, when Elijah Wood and Sean Ashton were putting on their feet, they had to get up early and be there, stand there for like 6 hours when they put up their feet. Now, with changes in technology in The Hobbit, Martin Freeman could show up and within 20 minutes he could have his Hobbit feet on, just slide them in and sew them up and all that, and boom, you're done. I wonder how Elijah Wood and all that felt about returning and being like, hey, it's that easy? Darn you. Anyway, so we get the first one. And they're starting to throw in things that didn't belong. For example, the dwarf king has some angst towards Bilbo. And this whole idea of having him with them. But he just seems kind of on edge in general. But of course, Bilbo, being the hero of the story, has got to have his comeback. And his shining moment returns again. Of course, it ends with the one question everyone asks. Damn you, Eagles. Why just couldn't you take them all the way, to their destination? Why did you have to drop them off literally at the top of a mountain? That they have to walk all the way down just to go to the lonely mountain. But that's okay. That's number 1 for you. Now we have number 2. First off, we complete the journey with a lot of the adventure stuff that happened in the book itself. But again, they take what was there and they add more to it. If anything, they try to add this love story between an elf and a dwarf. Not really wondering what was the point of that other than to just add more time. There comes a time when you feel like they're really trying to milk the cash cow here. That said, the one thing that really got to me was that from what I understood, and I'm no expert on Tolkien, whatsoever, but I really felt, because one thing I was hearing over and over again from people back in at the turn of the millennia, was that Peter Jackson did his best to really stay true to the books. He wasn't always possible. He had to alter something here or there. Aragorn's speech becomes King Theoden's speech. Theoden? The King of Rohan's speech. Okay? Parts of the book, things that happened in the Two Tower were now moved to Return of the King, and vice versa. Okay? However, despite the mix and matching, the way I understood it was that he tried hard to stay true to the heart, to the spirit and the letter of the book. Here, he's trying to stay true to the spirit, but now they're trying to extend it by adding all this other stuff that wasn't in the book to begin with, and really had no business being there. That said, we finally get to the mountain. We finally meet the dragon. Okay? And then we have the very long, drawn-out battle with him, if you could call it that. It's more about running around, ducking him, and hopefully trying to get his attention and stuff like that. The funny thing about this is, what I have to say really has to deal with the end of it. As we come to the last section of the book. And the last section of the book is, as it was presented here, it's the battle. It's the major battle. And the funny thing is that I really was hoping for a Bilbo Baggins from the cartoons. The Bilbo Baggins who was like, dude, you're going to war over this. There's plenty. And you're going to war over it. Now, again, they're extending war. They're bringing things into it that don't belong. Like, I'm sure, it's hard to tell what belonged and what didn't belong, but it just felt overstuffed. And then the battle, when the battle finally did happen, it was not as good as the battle from Lord of the Rings. You expected things to get better, but they didn't. You literally saw people clashing up against each other, but you didn't see the heads falling off, or the slashes, or the pounding like you did in Lord of the Rings. In Lord of the Rings, you saw them actually punching, and you saw parts where people were scattered. Here, everything was so in close. And they had, of course, the human jerk, who was in the movie way too much. They could have killed him in the beginning of this movie. I would have been happy. But he just stayed around over and over again. It's like, dude, when are we going to get rid of this guy? I liked The Hobbit, the Battle of the Five Armies, despite its flaws. And that's saying something. You know, there are movies that we have seen where when we watch the flaws, they kill us. They kill the movie, you know, and I can understand it. I saw it. Like when the guy decides to jump up on the the cart and ride the cart down to save his family. You know that was just forced. And like his families were constantly in danger. They were the Mary Jane to his Spider-Man. It's like the family could, and the brother, he actually, proved himself pretty capable. But they were throwing in these moments that just made you cringe. And the Five Armies just weren't the Five Armies they were supposed to be, in my opinion. I understood where they come from. I understood that they had their moments. The worst part were these earthworms that popped out of the ground and then left. It's like, dude, they're huge. Let them fight for you or something. Don't just come in and go out. It did have good moments, though. But remember, the Battle of the Five Armies barely took up a page on the book. Or they took up I think it was just like 2, not even 3 pages. Okay? It was just the wars, the armies came together. And they fought. And now they decided, well, we're making a movie out of this so we can be visual. We can take that and make a whole movie just out of this one battle. Oh, and let's not forget about Smaug. We got to deal with him too. The point is, they wanted to be stylish. And I felt like at the end, as I thought about this now, they really started to really betray the spirit and the letter of the book. But not to the point where I did not like it. I still enjoyed it. I still felt it was epic. It was still a lot better than a lot of the things we have nowadays. That's why I get to see it. The Hobbits, they get to see it. They're not as good as Lord of the Rings. That is true. But you know what? So what? You can't get to that level of greatness. That doesn't mean you still can't be good. And that's why I love The Hobbit. Bilbo Baggins, one of my favorite characters. Martin Freeman, definitely the right choice. But he seemed kind of out of place in the Battle of the Five Armies. But then again, he was supposed to be. He really didn't want any part of this anymore. He had done his part, and now everything he had worked to achieve was falling apart on him before his eyes. And that's the part I liked. I don't know how well Tolkien described what happened to the Dwarf King, his mental decline. I don't think it was like that, because I remember him and his guys going out to battle early, not waiting like they did in the movies. So that's the part. I don't know, but I'll take that. That was the one change I would say I liked. A lot of changes I didn't like, but and it wasn't as good as it normally was. It was still okay. I'm willing to accept it. I'm willing to at least give it a see it. I think if you get into these movies, if you like these movies, they're worthy. They're a watered down version, but that's what The Hobbit kind of was. If anything, the biggest mistake I feel they made was that they made the 3 movies. They should have made the 2 movies. You know what? I would have been happy with that. 2 movies, I'll accept that. You just don't have to draw out things like you do. You don't have to make the elves all about this white jewel stuff that in the end didn't mean anything. Never came back to it. What's going to be funny for me is when I see the extended version, because there is something in the 3rd one that applies strongly to the Lord of the Rings that they never resolved at all. And I'll go ahead and tell you, Saruman stands there in front of Gandalf and says, I will deal with Sauron, who they know is back, but he's not strong because he doesn't have the ring. So Saruman is supposed to go after him, but we don't see that. Nothing happens. And that's supposed to be, in my opinion, the fall of Saruman, assuming he didn't fall already. I mean, it's hard to say. I don't know. But then again, I shouldn't know because these things were not in the book. So why should I worry about that? I think that's another part where they will. But, that says something. To say that I can still give it a see it, despite the fact that I love this movie, warts and all. I accept this movie for what it was, even though I long for what it could have been. If they just would have taken away the fluff, stayed with the book, I would have been very happy with this movie. But they added too much and almost lost it, but didn't. I still give it a C. All right, guys, that's it for me for today. We'll see you at the theaters.